So how do I put this? I've got worms. Yep, worms from Uncle Jim's Worm Farm. And today I am going to show you how to create a deluxe 5-star resort for your worms. This is an indoor worm composting bin. So many people spend hundreds of dollars a season on soil. But if you've got an indoor worm composting bin, they will create the soil for you, just eating your food scraps. So I'm going to show you how to do this. Follow along to save some money. This is Accidentally Country. There are no better worms for vermicomposting or worm composting than red wigglers. I bought mine 250 from Uncle Jim's Worm Farm. It is probably the best place to buy worms online for your composting bin. I am not an affiliate or sponsored by Uncle Jim's, but I believe in this product and I ordered this just to demonstrate. So the red wiggler actually can eat its weight in food scraps every day. Picture eating your weight every day in food scraps. Well, that's what the red wiggler can do. So these 250 red wigglers, what's also very interesting to know is that they will double in size every 60 days until the bin gets too crowded, and then they will slow down. So you don't need a ton of worms to start reproducing, but this is a great worm to use for your composting bin. So this is a very easy project, and what it can do is save you hundreds of dollars from a much smaller pre-made worm composting bin for indoors. What you're going to need is a drill with a few bits. Obviously your worms. You're going to need a little spout, which I bought off of Amazon. I got some shredded paper to put in as well, along with some cow manure. And that's pretty much all the materials you need to build this amazing 5-star worm hotel. So let's get started and I'll show you how to do it. So we're going to use this first bin as our main worm composting bin. What you want to do is have a drill with, it doesn't really even matter the size of the drill bit. I'm using about a 3/4 size drill bit, but it can really be any size. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to drill holes all along the top, all around. The purpose of this is for one simple thing. Worms, like us, like to breathe, and they need oxygen. So we're going to do that all the way around. So as you can see from here, I've got holes that go all the way around the bin. So we're actually going to also be drilling holes in the bottom of the bin as well. It's going to allow the liquid and some of the excess fluid to be able to drain into a separate bin. So drill as many holes as you like. There's not really a method or a formula, but just make sure there are several. So as you can see, we've got plenty of holes now in the bottom of the bin as well. What I'd ask you to do if you're making one of these, take a second bin and do the exact same thing that you did to this bin. So you're going to take that bin that you just drilled holes into, and you're going to put that aside and put a brand new one that is yet to have any holes drilled into it. So this is going to be the part where we attach our spout. Then on the other side, we'll just tie it together right here. And now you have a perfect spout attached. So now comes the fun part. It's time to get our worms ready to enter their new home. So we're going to add in the main compartment for our worms. We've already pre-drilled the holes. We're going to add it right on top of the other bin. If you find out that this bin's a little too snug, you can always put a brick or something in there to provide a little bit more room for the fluid to accrue. So there's all kind of theories on what to use on your worm composting bin. The main thing is make sure you don't put anything acidic in here. Worms are really happy in their composting bin, but if you put a lot of acidic stuff in there, they're going to exit because they hate that. And the last thing you want is 250 or more worms going through your basement, your house, your garage, anything like that, or just escaping. So what I'm just using basic shredded paper as one of my 2 ingredients. The shredded paper is good because it holds moisture, and they love moisture. They also love to eat paper, and it's actually good for them. The second thing I'm going to use is cow manure. And make sure it is composted cow manure. Worms, like us, don't like to be in a bunch of manure. But the composted manure is actually really good for them. It's kind of replicates soil, makes them happy, and not very acidic. So it's a great part of the bedding for them. What I'd recommend is probably doing the whole bedding, maybe 4 or 5 inches, just making them happy, giving them some room to move around, and then they can start feeding off of the scraps that we put in. So this is the cow manure I got at Home Depot, just a basic bag. It says on the bottom here that it's composted, so it should be good. And make sure you mix it up together real good. And now it's time for these guys to enter into their new home. So keep in mind, they have been shipped for probably 3 to 5 days before getting to me. When you open up your bag, they are going to look very, very weak. The worms can lose up to 70% of their mass in just 3 or 4 days being shipped and being dehydrated. But they should recover in the next few days once we have them fed. Now let's look at these beautiful guys here. You see, they're in there, but they are very, very lethargic, and they almost look like they're barely moving. And so one thing to understand is when they are shipped, they are going to be very lethargic, and they are going to come to life very quickly once we give them that food that they desire. So one of the things about any composting bin is you always want to make sure the soil is damp, but not too damp where the worms will get agitated and maybe try to leave. So the description of the dampness you want is about the dampness of a wrung out sponge. Well, how are you supposed to know what a wrung out sponge feels like? Well, the beauty of this system is if you over pour, the excess water will drain into the bottom bin to where you can then just use your spout and get the excess water out and throw it out. So it's not that big of a deal in this system, but you do always want to make sure that the soil is a little bit damp. That way it keeps the worms hydrated and active and creating great, great soil for your garden. So a lot of people, when they do worm composting bins, they just have one bin. So once the worms create the soil and build their way up, they have to get a shovel or use their hands and dig out the worms one by one, trying to put them in a new bin to make sure that they're not throwing away their worms. What's great about this system is I told you to make an identical bin with the holes in the bottom and the holes in the top. And this is why this system is so great. You get the third bin like this. And when the soil's near the top, all you have to do is put this bin over the soil. And what happens when you put that bin over the soil, you make another bed on top of that bin. And then you start putting your food scraps into the top bin. So what happens is the worms realize there's no more food in the soil in this bin right here. And so the holes in the bottom, they start crawling and working their way up into the top new bin. So after a week or so, you take the top bin off. You have this bin full of rich soil to dump in the garden and virtually no worms. It's a great worm hotel, very easy. And the beauty of composting, especially indoor composting, if you do it right, it's almost odor free. which is great if it's going to be indoors. Even the manure that I put in, it's almost odor-free because it was already composted. So one more thing I forgot to mention about the bottom container is that as the worms are composting, they're going to be secreting their own fluids, which sounds gross, and you know what? It is. But what happens is once it collects this fluid, which some have called worm juice, you can empty it through the spout into a container, take it outside to your garden, pour it over your garden. It should be excellent fertilizer for your plants. So this is really good stuff to use, as gross as it sounds, and it's pretty much odor-free, like I said. Just make sure you empty this periodically. And the last thing you're going to want to do, for the first 24 to 48 hours of introducing worms into a new environment, is you're going to want to keep a steady light on top of this soil. And that's important because sometimes they get confused and aren't really sure what to do because it's a unique and new environment to them. They hate the light. So what you'll find is these worms, if they have steady light on the soil, will burrow their way down just enough to acclimate to the soil, to not try to escape, and be very happy here. But if you have the right conditions, these worms will never leave your bins. They will be happy for years and years to come and provide great soil for your gardens or for other things. These bags that you can buy at stores can be $30 or $40 a bag. And these worms can make multiple bags worth a year if you have a great composting system. So I hope this helped. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments below. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for following Accidentally Country. We'll see you next time.